these books being dumped. I mean, when did you discover this? And what did you do about it?
18 months ago, the state-imposed Highland Park emergency school manager either ordered, sanctioned, or through negligence allowed some 10,000 books in the Highland Park Senior High School library to be thrown in a dumpster. I found out about it on Thursday the 20th. I went up to the high school, climbed into the dumpster behind it, hoping beyond hope that there would be nothing there, and I found under audiovisual equipment that I myself had ordered less than 1,000 books. We still don't know what happened to the other 9,000.
What made you, I mean, most people would say, okay, this isn't right, you know, maybe say something about it, but you actually climbed in the dumpster.
I have a kind of unique relationship with that library. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Highland Park had an enlightened school board and enlightened educators, and they accepted the demands of many in the African American community to introduce black studies to the curriculum. And that library was produced in part behind that. In my class, that is the class of 1974, that's when I got in it, was the first to be taught black studies and to use that library. 20 years later, the school district brought me back in as a consultant to help enrich the library in terms of its audiovisual materials. So I not only benefited from it as a student, it laid the foundation for me as an historian, but then I came back and helped enrich it. So I have a very unique personal relationship with it.
So how did it make you feel when you found those books in there?
I'm still in shock. I can't describe what it was like to see that heritage thrown into a dumpster, because you have to understand, this was not just a high school library. It was one of this country's best collections on black history and culture. It was on par with most community college libraries, and in some respects with university graduate libraries, with a specific focus on global black history and culture. Not just African American, but Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America. And the reason that the library focused on black culture is because it was the belief of those who advocated black studies that one of the reasons that young African Americans especially do so much harm to themselves and to others is because they lack a sense of value. That library was designed to inculcate a sense of self-worth and self-esteem, the fundamental belief being if you respect yourself, you respect others.
And that's being thrown away.
Well, of course, this was in the 1960s and 70s when that library was created. In many ways, the problem of alienation among our youth is worse. So that library is more important now than it was when it was created.
And it's closed now?
As I said, the emergency school manager has accepted responsibility for it being thrown in the dumpster. He has not explained where the other 9,000 books that should be there are, nor has he explained where the hundreds of audiovisual materials are. Moreover, there's the question as to where Highland Park City archives are. They were kept in the Highland Park High School. A parent went in 2 weeks ago and discovered that the room that they were in is empty. So we may have not just lost a great library, we may have lost the archives of the city of Highland Park, and we just got word a few minutes ago that high school yearbooks are being thrown away. So I don't know how much damage this emergency manager can do to Highland Park. He appears to be competing with the emergency managers in other cities who have similarly dispossessed their residents of their heritage.
And I know a good question is, these are books. Someone can use them, right?
He gave the emergency schools manager gave an interview and said that he has no intention of keeping the books. He will make sure that they are stored safely until they can be given to a school or a library. Well, I tell you where you can store the knowledge in those books, in the minds and hearts of our children.
They were thrown away. Why weren't they donated? Why were they thrown away?
I hope Channel 2 asked the emergency manager that. He claims that it was a mistake, that contractors were hired to consolidate records. Well, how does consolidate records translate into throwing away a library? You mean to tell me those contractors don't know the difference between records and a library?
So what would you have to say to him?
I'd like to know what right he has to dispossess us of our heritage. He doesn't live here. He's a state-appointed manager. If he felt that he had to do something with the records, then why wouldn't he come to the citizens and let them know? That library was to Highland Parkers what the DIA is to Detroiters. And if a Republican state legislator had the good sense to try to enact legislation to protect the DIA, then you would think that an emergency manager would have the good sense to be able to protect our heritage. That library was irreplaceable. And if the Highland Park City libraries have been thrown away, those are even more irreplaceable. As I told you, I became an historian largely because of that library. We're talking first edition hardbacks covering the entire black world in diversity, range, and depth. It was one of the best black studies libraries in the country, and then ended up in a dumpster, instead of, as I said, in the minds and the hearts of our children. So Highland Parkers have good reason to be outraged, but most people that I've talked to in the cities that are under emergency management don't like it. But throwing away those books has caused Highland Parkers for the first time to ask very hard questions about the nature of emergency management. They're not just looking at the destruction of books, but what does it mean when one person has dictatorial powers to throw away your heritage, either deliberately or through neglect? That's serious. And other cities are starting to ask the same questions. Why should the Republican governor and the Republican state legislature empower one person to be able to decide all that? And according to the legislation, they're not even held legally accountable, although I understand the ACLU is challenging that.
So you're saying regardless if it was an accident or not, it's ridiculous?
I consider it a moral crime against our children and our grandchildren. And if he's a father, he should be ashamed of himself. And while he's saying he accepts responsibility, I have yet to hear him offer an apology. But apology wouldn't be enough. He claims that some of the records were recovered. A parent went in and shot photographs of those records. I saw maybe 500 books. Where are the other 8,500? Did he send the contractors out to a landfill to recover those? So in my opinion, what he's offering is merely excuses. By saying I accept responsibility but not explaining how it happened.